Today we're going to look at philosophy and basic beliefs, exploring the fundamental concepts of philosophy and beliefs, which is what we're going to do today. Now, philosophy has a definition, and there's many definitions that have been given to philosophy, but for the purpose of this class and as an introduction to the concept, we're going to say that philosophy is the systematic study of fundamental questions about existence, knowledge, ethics, and the nature of reality. It involves critical thinking, analysis, and exploring the concepts that often lack definitive answers. So, with that in mind, we're thinking about philosophy, but are also thinking, well, what are some of the concepts that come up in philosophy? So, what are the branches of philosophy? Well, philosophy can be divided into branches like metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, and logic. So, when we're talking about metaphysics, what do we mean? Well, metaphysics is a branch of philosophy that explores the nature of reality, existence, and the fundamental nature of the universe. It delves into concepts like causation, identity, time, space, and the relationship between mind and matter. So really, metaphysics has in its own name the idea of the exploration and understanding of nature. So, Stephen Hawking, talking about the origin of the universe. You can say, well, his ideas were scientific, and they were, but they were also not just scientific, but they also had a philosophical nature to them. And so, if we're going to categorize the philosophy of that man, well, we would categorize his philosophy and the area of his thought into the metaphysical arena. So it's the understanding of the universe, trying to explain its existence and how it was caused, and so on and so forth. Another branch of philosophy is called epistemology. Well, epistemology is really knowledge. So, epistemology is a branch of philosophy that concern with the nature of knowledge, belief, and justification. Usually, when we're thinking about philosophy, we're more or less thinking about the area of epistemology. We're talking about knowledge and how it examines how knowledge is acquired, justified, and shared, as well as the limits and reliability of human understanding. So it is knowledge at the core. And so, where does that knowledge come from? Where do our beliefs come from? How are we justifying those beliefs? This is all the area of epistemology. Then you have ethics, which usually isn't thought of as a branch of philosophy, although it is. It's usually more, it stands alone almost, but it would be a branch of philosophy. Ethics is a branch of philosophy that deals with questions of morality, right and wrong, and principles of ethical decision making. It explores theories of how individuals should behave and make ethical choices in various situations. There's usually in a class of ethics philosophy, when the ethics come up, there's that example, and the example is, you know, would you steal bread to feed your starving family? So you either let your family starve by being a moral person, or you create a immoral wrong through theft, yet your family lives because they're no longer starving to death. That's a question of ethics and a question of the good. Sometimes you'll hear the word ethics come up, and it will be uh, a little bit different discussion. It won't be a philosophical discussion, but you may later on, or maybe you've already gotten into a job and there's a discussion of business ethics. Um, Unfortunately, business ethics becomes basically the anti-theft policy of the corporation. So when you say, "Oh, business ethics," I'd love to learn more about that. Sometimes there's philosophical ideas brought up in that, but sometimes it's just basically don't steal from the company. Um, but ethics, uh, there are some very hot topics that come up underneath ethics, and won't dive into them here. Uh, but I can bet you can imagine what might come up underneath ethics. Logic is the fourth branch, or one of the four branches, and logic is the study of valid reasoning, argumentation, and the principles of thinking rationally. It involves identifying logical fallacies, evaluating the structure of arguments, and using valid inferences to draw conclusions. So, in the area of logic, something like presuppositions may come up. So, a presupposition is a set of presumptions that an individual has when they come to a given idea or a given argument. So presupposition is the viewpoint, and it's not just a viewpoint. It's what you're likely to believe because of your age, what you're likely to believe because of your socioeconomic status, what you're likely to believe because of your race or ethnicity. Uh, and so you're coming into a discussion with certain presuppositions. And so that would be the study of presuppositions and the study of argumentation and all those things that go along with that would come over the area of logic. And so there's philosophical schools, philosophical schools of thought, and some of them are as such. We have existentialism, you have utilitarianism, and stoicism, and these shape the diverse theological perspectives. Now, existentialism and utilitarianism, um, those those come up not as much recently as the third one. And the third one has become kind of a hot button thing for particularly young people, and that's Stoicism. Stoicism is the idea, basically, that one is to keep themselves composed at all times and view the world in a very, and you've heard it, stoic manner. This comes back to ancient Greece and even a philosopher in the pre Aristotelian, pre-Platonic area, and that was Zenu, and it's gained in popularity. You can even um, follow on Instagram a guy who has a page, and it's not only on Instagram, it's all over social media, but it's called the Daily Stoic, where he just um, talks about the Stoic philosophy and quotes these Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and others. So there are different schools of thought when you come to um, philosophy. Under the area of philosophy, we're going to deal with beliefs and worldviews. And a worldview is an individual's fundamental set of beliefs, values, assumptions, and perspectives that shape their outlook on life, reality, and the universe. It influences how individuals interpret and interact with the world. So, whatever their worldview is, it's going to drive um, everything they do, really. And there's multiple worldviews, and you can look them up. Um, Particularly, worldviews are shaped by um, experience. Um, they're often shaped by religion. They're shaped by values, ideas within family. So and it's geography too. It's much like the the topic of presuppositions. What we come to, what we have when we come to an argument or a question. All these things that we have in our past that have helped us to outline the perspective that we have, and the presuppositions that come up before we even walk into a room. A worldview is much like that. It's the beliefs we have, it's the values that we have, it's the assumptions that we make, it's perspectives that have shaped our lives. And they can come from all different places and have all different influence upon us. And so everybody comes to a given topic with some kind of presupposition, some kind of worldview that they bring to bear upon whatever philosophical question or ethical dilemma that they are faced with. Worldview and understanding your worldview and the worldview of others around you is very important. And how about religious and spiritual beliefs? Because they have a huge impact upon our philosophy. Now, religious beliefs encompass a person's faith, doctrine, ritual, and practice associated with a particular religious tradition. They often involve beliefs about the nature of the divine, the afterlife, and the purpose of human existence. Secular and humanistic beliefs also come into play when dealing with a philosophy, because these religious beliefs, secular and humanistic beliefs, they're philosophies. And secular humanism emphasizes human values, reason, and ethics without a supernatural basis. And so if you're coming to a philosophical idea with either religious or irreligious, it's still a philosophy. It's still a worldview. And it's part of the overall understanding of philosophy itself. It's hard to measure the full impact of philosophy on life and on us. The philosophical ideas influence culture, ethics, politics, and societal norms. Um, Often I do hear people say, well, I'm a free thinker. And maybe I've said this before. Um, but to me, to be a free thinker, you would have to have had no influence at all when anyone else has thought. And if you live in modern society, that is near impossible because thoughts from generations past, thoughts from prehistory, come to us through media, through others. It would be almost impossible to be a free thinker, thinking for yourself without the influence of some other philosophical idea changing the way you think. So philosophy has a huge impact on us and our culture. And so when you go back and you study, these philosophical ideas, their origins, because some philosophical ideas have benevolent origins, and some of them have malevolent origins. And it's important to understand where they began and what they began for. So it's hard to escape the impact of philosophy upon us. Challenges to philosophical inquiry. Well, philosophy often grapples with complex questions that may not have definitive answers. One of those deep questions that is at the basis of most great philosophers and what they've tried to understand is the problem of evil. Why is there evil? So sometimes there is no clear answer, but there's still philosophical inquiry, even though the answers aren't definitive. And so there's many philosophical questions out there that would fit the bill. Of course, we have philosophy in the modern world, uh, the relevance of philosophy in contemporary world, including technology, ethics, and globalization. There's going to be a great deal of talk about the ethics from a philosophical viewpoint which surround AI, artificial intelligence. And so what philosophies will come up from these things. So there's great philosophical questions, moral questions, ethical questions that are going to come about in our modern day because of the technology and the technological revolution that we're living in. And so philosophy is not going away, and all the philosophies of the past are going to shape the way we deal with problems in the future and how we move forward as a society. So if I were going to ask some discussion questions on this topic, how has philosophy shaped the way we approach ethical dilemmas in a modern society? Do you think there can be universal truths in philosophy, or is everything subjective? What role does critical thinking play in philosophical inquiry and everyday decision making? How might different cultural backgrounds influence people's philosophical perspectives? Can science and philosophy coexist, or do they often clash in their views on the nature of reality? In an ever-changing world, how can ancient philosophical ideas remain relevant to contemporary issues? What ethical considerations should guide the development and use of emerging technologies? There's one. That would really be a question about AI. Okay. Have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video.